it. Okay. All right. Just give me one moment. It's coming up. And here we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's class. So today I've been telling you guys about Dr. Ritamarie Lascalzo. She is the founder of the Institute of Nutritional Endocrinology and specializes in using the wisdom of nature, married with modern scientific research, which I love that, married with, to restore balance to hormones with a special emphasis on thyroid, adrenal, and insulin imbalances, which we're going to talk about today. Her practitioner training programs, and she trains health coaches as well as other practitioners, empower health and nutrition professionals, and that includes physicians and nurses as well, and others to use functional assessments and natural therapeutics to unravel the mystery of their clients' complex health challenges. And I'm not going to stop there, because she is also a licensed doctor of chiropractic with certification in acupuncture, a certified clinical nutritionist with a Master of Science in Human Nutrition and Computer Science. I mean, you'd be 80 right now. I can't believe how young you are and doing all this.
How young I am. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm not kidding. She's also completed 500 hours in the herbal medicine certification program and is certified as a living food chef, instructor, and coach, and has trained and certified hundreds of others in the art of using palate pleasing. I'm loving this. I mean, just amazing. Your bio is amazing. So let's talk a little bit about how you got where you are. I know you have a story, as we all do. So tell us about how you got into all of those things.
Yeah.
Brought you to it.
Absolutely. So it's like most people who get into health coaching. It's not something we learned about in high school that said, I want to be a health coach, or I want to be a doctor of natural medicine, or I want to go into functional medicine when I grow up. Maybe that's changing now, but not when I was younger. And so I got sick in my 20s from pushing the pedal to the metal and having a diet that was crappy my whole life. And constantly being too vain to gain weight from the crappy diet. So constantly, crash diet, binge eating, crash diet, binge eating. And when I got into my 20s and I started a job and I was working really hard and I was pushing and I was going out to lunches and dinners, taking clients out and eating all this rich food, drinking a lot of wine. And I didn't connect any of that to when my health fell apart. So I didn't realize I was tired, because I never felt tired. I always felt like this. Only back then I was on caffeine, and I realized I started the caffeine fix when I was a kid, because we'd drink the tea, the Lipton tea.
Yes.
All day long. We'd have it for breakfast. Then
we did too.
We'd have that. Then even at 10 o'clock at night, I'd have Lipton tea with my sisters with the Oreo cookies. So I've been doing this my whole life, but it crashed. I feel really fortunate that I crashed when I was in my 20s. So at about age 25 or so, it was really bad. It was like I was just constantly with the black tea and the Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi. And I started to get these really bad burning pains in my stomach. And I was having really bad headaches, and I was having sinus stuff. And I kept going to the doctor about the sinus stuff that wouldn't go away. And they would, instead of saying, well, let's look at your diet, let's look at food allergies, let's look at what might be really going on, what's causing all this mucus, they were doing little cryotherapy type things up my nose and injecting steroids into my nose.
Oh my God.
That helped. And then finally, after a few days of pushing myself and teaching and drinking lots of tea and alcohol and popping a bunch of aspirin to help with the hangover from the alcohol, I was starting to get this really bad burning in my stomach. So I went to the doctor, who said, well, maybe you have an ulcer. Here's ulcer medication. I was unknowing. I started taking the ulcer medication. And then I was finally, did the GI series and all that. He go in and he says, hey, good news, you don't have an ulcer. I'm like, great, I could stop taking this medication. What's wrong? What do I do? We don't know, just keep taking the medication. And that's when the intelligence woke up. I said, really? Like, how long would I be taking this for? He goes, could be the rest of your life. I'm like, really? And then I had this vision. I'm 25 now. What am I going to be like at 50, on all kinds of medication, on dialysis, in a wheelchair? I had this vision, and I'm like, not me. Yeah. So I said, could it be my diet? My diet's really crappy. Could it be my diet? Oh no, diet has nothing to do with it. And that's when I took the challenge, and that's when I started my research. And this was in the 80s. So back in the 80s. So he didn't have the internet to go, He didn't have the latest summit to go on. You didn't have interviews like this or classes like this. You basically went to the library and you went to the bookstore. And I was fortunate enough to be able to, there was Stanford Medical School was not too far from where I lived. So I was able to even go to the Stanford Medical Library and look there. So I started researching. And I was like, oh, okay, this is me. This is my diet. I'm toxic. Eventually, did some detoxes, but it took me years. It took me like two to 3 years to figure it out and get my health back. And so once I did, I said, okay, enough's enough here. Other people need to be able to get this information. How do I go back and learn this stuff? How do I actually learn this stuff? Well, I looked at medical school. Well, I'm not going to learn it in medical school.
Mm.
So I looked around and I looked for people that I trusted that were talking this stuff, which weren't very many back then. Most of them were chiropractors. And I said, oh, okay, well, I could get a degree as a chiropractor. I'll be licensed as a primary care physician. And then I'll also get a degree in nutrition, and I'll study all this stuff, and then I'll build a practice. And that's what I did. And it took a long time. It took a long time to figure out how to actually make a business out of it. I went from having a very, very lucrative career in computers back in the day when there weren't that many women in it, and people in the US got paid a lot of money to be in it. And so I left this lucrative career, and it took me literally 10 years to come back up to the same salary I was making when I left that career.
Wow. But and you went to school, you went to nutritional school and chiropractic school at the same time, is that right? Crazy.
Yes.
How did you, so stay there for a moment, and how did you not go into burnout while you were doing that? How did you avoid going, backwards, so to speak? Because that's
self-care.
stressful.
I had learned I'd learned to eat right. So I didn't allow the eating to go. I didn't go back to the old crappy eating pattern. I knew that was what was driving me. Every morning I'd get up and do green smoothies before they were popular. It was based on Ann Wigmore and the energy soup. I would make that every day, and I'd make a quart of it, and I would drink it. I would bring it to school, and I'd be drinking it. I would ride my bike to school, 8 miles. And then at lunchtime, I'd ride my bike to the gym, and I would go, or the swimming pool, and then I'd swim laps, and then I'd ride my bike back to school. So I kept up my exercise, but I fit it in, right, to my busy schedule. And then on weekends, I would drive up to San Francisco from the South Bay area in California, and I would do my nutrition training on the weekends. So I really was working, it wasn't every weekend. It was like once a month weekend. So on those weeks, I was literally in school for 70, 80 hours.
Wow.
Right? But I kept taking care of myself. That was the foremost thing.
Yeah.
And graduated and started my practice, and decided about, 8 years ago that I could reach more people if I did group things and started to go online. Again, before it was popular, I should be like the queen of online programs because I created them before they were popular, before they were doing it, but I didn't know anything about marketing back then.
Right.
So I'd start to do it, and then I started studying the marketing, and now I've learned it, and I teach it, and I know what to do, but I reach a lot of people. And then I said, I got so many people that took my programs were practitioners who said, how'd you learn this stuff? I learned this from you. So I decided to start the practitioner training. And it's a very in-depth practitioner training. So
I know. I've got some students that, you do a very good job. So let's stay here for just a moment. And just let me say that my mom, she's 67, I think. 67 or 68. I always get it wrong. Of course, I can't remember my husband's birthday either. But anyway, she raised me the same way that you were talking about, with the nutrition soup, and she raised our sprouts and she made our yogurt. I remember when I was, my first vitamin, I think I was 5 or 6 years old. She gave me a liquid vitamin, and it was bright green, like the color of my matcha, right? Bright green. And she said, you have to take that before you can come out to the garage sale and help. And I sat at that countertop with that vitamin in that spoon sitting in front of me for 4 hours. I refused to drink it, eat it. It smelled horrible. So I was raised that way too. And I think that we all kind of slip off the wagon in our lives sometime. And that's what happened to me. I had to reinvestigate what it was like to find those pieces that were missing. And a lot of my learning came from when I was a child. So I brought it all back into my life and reapplied it. So don't you think that, and this is really important because I want health coaches to understand, is what I teach them is we need to get underneath what's happening. When people are diagnosed with things like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or migraines or whatever, it's a diagnosis, but it's really a symptom. It's a diagnosis to conventional medicine, but to us, it's a symptom of something much deeper.
Yep.
And so becoming investigators, like you became an investigator for your health, to me is kind of what we do. We get in here and we investigate, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So how did the endocrinology part come in? What made you interested in the endocrinology part?
Yeah. So that whole thing, what you just said, and this is what I teach, we always have to ask the question, why? The way I look at diagnoses, it's a box. So in order for them to know how to treat you, they have to put you in a box. And then they have to see what remedies, what drugs, or what procedures are going to help that box or have been shown to suppress the symptoms that put you in that box.
Right.
But in reality, we're all different. And you may have something and you're diagnosed with migraine, and your migraines may be a result of the stress in your life. Someone else's might be a gluten allergy. Someone else's might be gut dysbiosis. Someone else's might be a thyroid issue. But when they put you in a box called migraine, you get the migraine treatment.
Yes.
But it doesn't address you. Right? So it's always asking why. Why do I have this? I say when somebody comes in with hot flashes, well, why do they have hot flashes? Well, maybe it's a female hormone imbalance. Of course it's a female hormone imbalance. But why do they have a female hormone imbalance? Well, is it because their adrenals are burned out and they have no pregnenolone left to go through the whole steroid synthesis cycle? Okay, if their adrenals are burned out, why are their adrenals burned out? Well, they've been living life on the fast lane. They've been eating all kinds of food that's disrupting the gut, that's disrupting their thing. You have to go always backwards to why. And I say, keep asking why until you can get to the core. Yes. And the core would be, what are their exposures? What are their habits? What are their genetics? And how does that play in? But what's the actual underlying cause? And then you can go about and give them symptom relief with herbs or foods or whatever for the symptoms, as long as you're working on the root. And that's the philosophy with it. I really believe
great.
We are investigators, detectives. I almost called my program the health detective program. No, they don't. They said, oh, we don't want to be detectives. We want to be something more. So how did the endocrinology come about? So I'm working with people, and I'm working on adrenal problems, and I'm working on thyroid problems, and I'm working on insulin resistance, huge. And I'm working on a lot of digestion. And by the way, the digestive tract is the biggest endocrine organ in the body, right? We don't
elaborate on that. Elaborate on that, because you've mentioned that in the today when I listened to the interview. I want you to talk about that, because many people don't. First of all, let's really back up and give us just we've had Keisha Ewers on, we've had Jessica Drummond, so we have a general understanding of the endocrine system, but give us the briefing into why the gut is the biggest endocrine gland in the body. Go ahead and start with what is endocrinology and how does that apply?
So endocrinology is basically signaling the body from afar. Usually there's a remote control that says, hey, we're going to put a signal in the bloodstream, a hormone that goes to a target that attaches to a receptor that tells that particular cell what to do. So the thyroid is a signal, thyroid hormone is a signal for the metabolism. How fast do you burn oxygen? How fast do you make energy? And the adrenals are signal to a stress response, a protective response. What do we have to do to protect us from that tiger that's chasing us, right? So then the reproductive hormones, the signal is to make us procreate, and then give us the urges to do the activities that help us to procreate, right? So that's all what those things do. Well, the digestive tract, people think we just eat the food and enzymes come in and break it down, and then we have probiotics and all the good organisms, and they take care of it, and then the food comes out. But what the whole thing is controlled by hormones. So it starts with gastrin in the stomach. Gastrin is a hormone that stimulates the secretion of stomach acid. And then there's other hormones, cholecystokinin, secretin, incretins, peptide YY. There's all these hormones that get produced. And I have a chart that I gave out when I was doing a launch for my Digestive Mastery course. There's actually a chart that shows some of the major ones and where they come about. So if anybody wants to go there, I think you can go to digestivemastery.com. / something. I can't remember exactly, but I can give you that link. But I have a chart that's for free and it's still available. So all of these things are controlled by hormones. So it's not just the activity in the local area that the pancreas secretes the enzymes that go into the duodenum that then help to break down the food. That's if those were hormones, that would be an exocrine hormone, like the salivary glands. They're glands that are exocrine because they secrete their hormone directly into where it's going to act, or they're secreted directly into where it's going to act. But an endocrine function is where it gets secreted in the blood. and then it travels. Well, with the gut, it doesn't have to travel too far, but still those hormones get secreted into the blood. The blood then triggers the release, or the system then triggers the release of other chemicals. So it's hormonally controlled how much bile you release at any given moment. It's hormonally controlled how much pancreatic enzyme you release. The other thing within the the gut is that there's certain hormones that trigger the release of insulin and glucagon. Okay, there's a glucagon-like peptide that triggers release. So they actually stimulate the pancreas to start getting ready for when the fuel that you're eating in this meal, the glucose, gets into the bloodstream, and then the pancreas has to know. So it's not just when the sugar gets in the blood that the pancreas comes in and gets involved in its endocrine function, which is glucose control. It's while it's in the gut. So the gut is sensing how much glucose is in that food and then sending a signal via the blood, hey, pancreas, get ready. There's going to be a glucose load coming soon.
You know what? Just hearing you talk about this, like I'm familiar with probably 80% of the things you've said because I'm a geek like that. I like to learn it all. If I have something going on with my labs, I'm going to learn about it all. But here's something, this is something that's not being talked about. If you're on my Clarity board, my health coach Clarity board, there's 1,700 coaches on there. Someone puts a message in there that says, when a client has chronic constipation, the first thing people do is say, gut healing protocol, leaky gut, this. No one ever talks about, or even some of the people that are more familiar with microbiome and things like that might throw a comment in here or there. But no one talks about the hormonal secretion. No one talks about how important that is for a healthy gut. I mean, that's the whole piece that's missing.
Right. And thyroid function is so important for constipation. Liver function.
Yes.
In Chinese medicine, they talk wet or dry constipation, and you can look at that. And actually, some of the hormones that we think about in terms of being hormones, like female hormones, like Dong Quai, for example, the way it works is by enhancing the liver movement, the liver translocation of the metabolites, and then it affects the gut. And the gut then, based on what hormones are in there, that affects the microbiome, which then affects the bowel movement. So it's way more complicated than people make it out to be. And we don't have to think about, oh my God, it's too complicated, I can't do this. But it's knowing that when somebody comes in and they're on the fiber and they're eating lots of veggies and they're exercising and they're still constipated, you want to be looking beyond the constipation, beyond the gut, and into hormonal system. So how I got into, so that gives you a background on the endocrine system.
Right.
How I got into calling it nutritional endocrinology, what I do is actually a very funny story, because I had broken my arm several years ago. I mean, and I tried, I'm the natural queen, right? So, oh, it's not broken and we're just going to move it. And finally, it's like this a month later, let me get it x-rayed, and bone from back on the humerus had cracked off and was in the front in my joint space. So I couldn't move it. And I had to have surgery. So I had to have surgery to put that piece back on. But I don't do drugs, so I wasn't going to do, I go under an anesthesia. So I did a local anesthetic to numb my arm, and I was awake the whole surgery. The saw, smelling my tissue, the whole bit. So I'm having a conversation with the anesthesiologist, and we talked about kids and baseball and all kinds of stuff. And it was like, we still had another hour and a half to go here. So I said, you know what, why don't you ask me a question about nutrition? And then I can talk for days and it'll completely distract me. He goes, really? You're interested in nutrition? What branch of nutrition? Only an MD is going to ask you, what branch of nutrition are you interested in? And I was like, that's interesting. Then I thought, you know what? I think it's nutritional endocrinology. And at that moment, my whole body shuddered. And if I could have, I would have had him give me a computer, and I would have gone to GoDaddy and grabbed the name, because it's like, I hope it's available. That's the name. That's what my program's going to be.
Right.
And I grabbed it, and unfortunately, it was available. I did it as soon as I got home with one hand.
Oh my God.
Grab the URLs, and that's the birth of my nutritional endocrinology program.
Wow. So let's back up to the arm being numb and you being awake. I want to touch on this, because I think since we're talking about stress, we are talking about stress here, because everything that happens in our lives can be a stressor, environmental toxins, what we're eating, all of that. A surgery is a stressor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had surgery on my shoulder last December, and they did a nerve block in my neck. They put a shot in my neck and my whole arm was numb.
Yep.
gosh, I don't know, 9-10 hours. And I'm telling you, you want stress, don't feel your arm when you run into something of a surgery, right?
Right.
How did you manage? This is a tip that I want you to share, not only with coaches, but that they can share as well. When your body goes under that kind of stress, I know it was just a local anesthetic, but some of us have to do anesthesia because we can't handle the idea of something happening. Yeah. How do you recommend people handle the stress when they're coming out of something like surgery or a car accident or something like that?
Absolutely.
Everything's affected in the body by those kinds of
everything. I'll tell you what. So after the surgery, I had my husband bring me some green juice, and that's all I had because they wanted to give me saltines and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah. I'm like, man, no. So I get home and I'm sipping very little. I'd only had a little bit because, you're not really in the mood for eating after surgery. So I'm sipping on my green juice. I said, I wonder what my blood sugar is doing. My blood sugar was up to 150.
Wow.
Stayed up for 3 days. And that's part of that is the stress of the surgery, because cortisol causes the release of stored, usually proteins, to convert into sugar so that you can run away from the tiger. And I thought, wow, the tiger actually bit me. My body didn't know the difference between a tiger biting into my arm or the surgeon who was fixing me biting into my arm. Right. It was tissue damage. It was all stress. So I went into this stress response. It took a few days, but what I did before it, fortunately, the anesthesiologist was very open, and I said, can I take anything beforehand? Can I take some, relaxing herbs or whatever? So he said yes, so I was able to take, and I do this muscle testing thing to see what I needed. And I took some things like valerian and lemon balm. I'm trying to think of some of the chamomile and some of the things that showed up. And I took some of those, and I also did my heart math technique.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah. So I did the heart math technique to just get me down, and I kept doing that throughout, bringing myself down as much as I could from sympathetic dominant nervous system to parasympathetic. And I'm breathing and doing that. And I did that for the days afterwards. And that's the way I dealt with it. And it took a couple of days. My blood pressure was high, which I have, usually it's 110/70, but my blood pressure was up to like 135/95. And they said, oh, that's not bad, compared to other people right before surgery, that's normal.
Yeah.
So, but for a few days, the blood pressure was high in spite of, I kept doing it because there was this actual physical stress to my body.
Yes.
Right? So I was able to keep it down to a minimum and keep it from affecting me too seriously.
Yeah. So one thing I want to, one thing that I've been doing one-on-one coaching and group coaching of my own, not just with coaches, but working with actual clients for over almost 7 years this coming June. And one of the things that, my questionnaire, as you know, is 14 pages long. So I get really in depth with people's lives and what's going on. And one of the questions I ask them is, how do they deal with stress? And many times, they say, oh, I exercise or this. And so it's a really big teaching point. And I try to tell my coaches the same thing is, we have to explain to people what stress really is, because they think it's just when there's a financial stress or just when they're fighting with their spouse. The body has no idea the difference between exercise and your car accident, happy stress, sad stress. It's all the same to us, right? I mean, is that true? Do you think?
So over exercising can be very stressful. So you can exercise in a range that keeps you from going over there. But if you're a marathon runner or you're a racer, you're going to get into the stress response. It's what you do afterwards and how you take care of yourself and how you replenish. If you're replenishing yourself with Gatorade, you're not getting yourself out of the stress, right? If you're replenishing yourself with green juice and you're keeping yourself nourished and you're keeping your fatty acids up to keep the inflammation down, and you have some techniques. And that's why I love heart math, because I'm not a meditator. I try really hard to be a meditator. I can't sit quiet for an hour or half hour.
That's not for everybody.
It goes and goes.
Yeah.
But with heart math, it's 30 seconds to a minute at a time. And I can just do it and I can feel the shift. And I've measured it. We have a heart rate variability monitor, and I've measured my heart rate variability, and I'm able to shift it. And when the heart rate variability is very high, like you're in this spiky heart rate range, that's stress. And when you're in a parasympathetic healing mode, your heart rate variability looks like a sine wave.
Yes.
And so I worked at that, and I don't use the device anymore. Can't be bothered, because I know it already. I know what it feels like in my body.
Yeah.
But I used it at the beginning as a
It's a helpful tool. So for anybody who's unaware, tell us a little bit, like I have the M-Wave 2 as well. And I have to tell you a funny story real quick. The M-Wave 2, it's, you know, for those of you who don't know, I have a video. I did a video on how to do it and everything. But you know, there's a clip that actually clips to your shirt and then you clip to your ear, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. My husband came home stressed out because he landed a really big job here in the community. And he was like, where's that thing? You know, that device that helps you breathe and relieve your stress. I'm like, the M-Wave? And he goes, yeah, that. And I said, okay. And I gave it to him and he's like, sits in the chair and he puts the ear thing on. He's sitting there and he's watching the number. And I'm going to let you explain what heart math is in a moment, but go up and down and he's trying to match his breathing. And he's like, it's not leaving the red zone. What is the matter with this thing? Well, you have the clip on it, that clip to your shirt on his ear. On his ear. not the sensor that checks your heart rate. So he thought he was having a heart attack because it stayed in the red the whole time. It's hilarious. But go ahead and talk about that. I love the Heart Math Institute. I love everything they do. I promote the M-Wave 2 for people who can't meditate. So why don't you give us a rundown about your experience with it and what it really is?
Absolutely. And there's also, in addition to the M-Wave 2, there's actually an app on the iPhone, and it's called Inner Balance. And it's just a plug that plugs into your phone. I think it's the lightning connector. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't remember which, but it plugs in and you stick it on your ear and you can go about your business, and it's really nice. So basically the concept is, we have these two aspects of our nervous system, the parasympathetic and of the unconscious nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And the sympathetic is for when we're running away from tigers and we're active, and it's really helpful and it's needed. The parasympathetic is where the vagus nerve gets to stimulate the digestive tract, and we get to actually digest our food. In sympathetic mode, it turns off the digestion because you don't want to be digesting when you're running away from a tiger. You want to have everything going towards getting away. So in sympathetic mode, the heart rate is just erratic. So we think about if I measure, I go, okay, I got a 60, so my heart rate is 60. We think every second there's a beat, but it's not. There's a variability in there. If every second there was a beat and it was a flat line, we'd be dead. We're close to it. So that's unhealthy. So what we do is we measure that, and this device actually maps out your heart rate variability. So when you're in stress mode, the heart rate variability, it might be like, it goes from 1 beat per second to 1 beat every 0.5 seconds, and then to every 2 seconds. And it's just, if you map it, it looks like this. When you're in the state of parasympathetic dominant mode, there's this nice sine wave. It goes up and down and up and down in a nice even way. And what that promotes is a coherence between your heart and your brain, which helps to turn your brain on. If you ever notice that when you get stressed out, you may not even be able to tell anybody your name, let alone how to get out of the situation. And I know I've been there where I'm on a webinar, I've got 500 people waiting for me, and my technology's not working. And if I go, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then I go, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And then I'll stop.
Breathe. Yes.
Go into appreciation, feel it throughout my body, and go, oh, I just have to do this. I'll just click here. I'll just go there. And then the problem's solved.
Yeah.
Right? We need to teach people how to recognize when they're in sympathetic. For me, I feel it in my chest. I feel like a fluttery or a tightness in my chest. And then I say, okay, I have to shift. And all I do is go, because I've practiced it enough, right?
Oh, wow.
You have to just practice it.
Yeah. I'm hearing really loud music.
Hang 1 second. KK? Kevin, I'm on a video call, and I need you to Sorry about that. That's my son.
It was fine, and then I was like, "It's getting louder." It's okay. Louder. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead then. So, you were talking about teach people how to get into that parasympathetic.
Yes. Because that's where healing happens, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the adrenals are stressed out. You're like producing a lot of cortisol when you're in that sympathetic mode. And cortisol actually raises your blood sugar, which is what we started out wanting to talk about today.
Yeah.
But the blood sugar goes up when you're under stress. And there's a reason for it. You need to have sugar in the blood so that it can facilitate the movement and the running and the jumping and the climbing, right? It turns off your Einstein brain. It turns off your high-level thinking because you don't need to solve physics problems. You need to go into your lizard brain, your hind brain, because you have to figure out how to get out of this situation. And that's not an Einstein brain part, right? That's not your lizard, that's your lizard.
Right.
So it helps you shift. I always tell people it helps you shift from your lizard to your wizard. And that's what gets you out of the situation.
Oh, very cool. So let's talk about the blood sugar then. I want to talk about insulin resistance. I want you to touch on what that is. And I also want you to touch on what you think about intermittent fasting for insulin resistance as well. So give us a definition of insulin resistance.
Yep.
And then let's roll into that, like the ways that people can fix that. Go ahead. You're fine. You're fine.
Off. Just turn it off, please. Just turn it off. Just turn it off.
I was literally in the other room.
Okay. It just started.
Well, that's a first. I've never had a guitar. I've had barking dogs and lawnmowers.
I know. Sorry about that.
It's okay. No big deal.
Okay. So insulin, first of all, we know is the hormone produced by the pancreas. Its job is to shuttle the sugar from the blood into the cells. When we don't have enough insulin, the blood sugar goes too high. If that happens repeatedly and our fasting blood sugar is above 120, we're diagnosed as diabetic. The insulin, we can't get it into the cells. So when it's high, we're foggy brained, we're fatigued, we just can't function at our best. And we end up with belly fat because all that sugar stays there and the pancreas keeps putting more and more and more insulin out and saying, come on, get into the cells. It doesn't realize that the cells are not taking up the insulin. Finally, when it reaches a threshold, it triggers the storage of all that extra sugar as fat. So people are eating all this food and they're not overeating maybe, but they're not eating the right kind of food. They're eating this food and instead of energizing them, it's being stored as fat. It's like, what? This isn't fair, right? Yeah. So insulin resistance is that state when the cells cannot take up the sugar. There's a lot of reasons for it. Insulin resistance happens when, number one, it can happen when we've used up all the nutrients that are required to help insulin take it in. Number two, when the inflammation from all the extra blood sugar and insulin causes damage to those cells, to the receptors, and we can't get it through. So, and the third one is just if we're not producing enough insulin, but that's not insulin resistance anymore. That's pancreatic failure. Mm-hmm. So insulin resistance is clinically diagnosable. We use that word again, the word that we're not supposed to use, but the clinically diagnosable when the blood sugar fasting is between 100 and 120. That's the medical definition of insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. So you're okay as long as your blood sugar fasting is below 100. What they're not telling you is that long before the fasting blood sugar gets to 100, a lot of the non-fasting blood sugars are going way up. And the problem is there is a way to detect it. Hemoglobin A1C will detect how high they've been going, but nobody tests that on normal people. They test it on diabetics, right? So it's an early warning signal. The other thing that's an early warning signal is you take your blood glucose after meals. It's called postprandial glucose measurement. Easy to do, little meter. You just run it through your little meter and $10 for the meter, another $100, $15, $20 for 100 strips. And you've got this ability to look inside your body that nobody's telling you about. Yep. And so you get to see decades before you develop insulin resistance or diabetes that you have what I call pre-insulin resistance or subclinical insulin resistance. It's before it actually shows up and you're between 100 and 120. Truth of the matter is the studies show that once you hit 90 as a fasting blood sugar, the incidence of heart disease goes skyrocketing. So people are believing and being told by their doctor that having a fasting blood sugar of 95 is just fine, when really they're at much higher risk of heart disease. Right? Yeah. You should be maintaining between 75 and 85. And for some people, even lower. Like I do best when my blood sugar maintains even lower than that. And that happens when I do intermittent fasting. And I just feel so great when I do that. So if that's enough of an explanation of insulin resistance, I'll talk about my feelings about intermittent fasting.
Yeah, and and let me just say this for the students. I actually did a video last year on how helpful a glucometer and a blood pressure monitor. I did 2 separate videos can be for people to have as tools in their little toolbox at home, and to be able to monitor those things, which I'll share for you guys as well, so you can kind of see the guidelines and what I recommend. And I did it for my clients actually last year, so I'll share that with the coaches. But make sure you touch on when it is and is not appropriate to do intermittent fasting as well, because I don't do well with that. So
not everybody does, right? Not everybody does. So, and I haven't figured out the exact like underlying biochemical mechanism for why some people do and some people don't. And I think it does have to do with glucose control and the ability to go into burning ketones for fuel instead of glucose. So what happens when you do intermittent fasting, and there's a couple of definitions. The way I first learned it and the way I think about it is really when you do once or twice a week, you do a day where you don't eat for 23, 24 hours. That doesn't mean you don't eat all your meals. The best way to do it, because otherwise that's a 36-hour fast. You want to do a 23, 24-hour fast. You eat breakfast one day, and you skip the rest of your meals and you eat breakfast the next day. That's a really good way to do intermittent fasting. You've got 24 hours of really cleaning out. And so the insulin, you increase your insulin sensitivity dramatically by doing that. You increase your levels of growth hormone dramatically while doing that. You decrease the blood glucose levels dramatically when doing that. So it's a great jump start for people when you're putting them on a cleanse or a program, if they can tolerate it. And I've had some people tolerate it really well and some people don't. The other way to do it, now, which works better for me, is I skip breakfast, skip lunch, then do dinner. I mean, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner. Wait, let me see. How do I do this? Oh yeah, so I'll eat a normal day and I'll eat dinner. That's my last meal, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. The next day I skip breakfast and lunch and then I have dinner.
Okay.
So for me, that's easier.
Yeah, but I've done that before. Yeah, because you're sleeping and you don't have to think about the fact that,
right? I have breakfast in the morning and now I have to go again 24 hours. I'm thinking, oh, that was really good. What can I have next? I'm hungry again. Whereas if I skip, because I don't have an appetite first thing in the morning, and then I just skip, you get used to the feeling of hunger. Like hunger is just another sensation, like an itch on a private part that you can't scratch in public, right?
Right.
So, well, just deal with it. I'm hungry. I can't eat right now. I'm not going to eat right now. I'll just deal with it. And you just learn to associate it with a signal that says, hey, when you get around to it, it'd be nice to put some food in, right?
Yeah.
Think about hunger that way, as opposed to, I'm hungry, I have to eat right now. People think of it as this discomfort that they have to solve right away.
Right.
Because they've grown up that way. They've been conditioned that way. So if you think about hunger as just a sensation, and you get in the habit of doing this 2 days a week or 1 day a week, it really dramatically enhances weight loss. I've had people who are stuck, plateaued, and then they do 2 days a week of intermittent fasting and boom. Now, some people can't do it that way, so they'll do vegetable broth instead of water when they're doing the fasting, or they'll do a dilute vegetable juice. Some people do bulletproof coffee, not crazy about that one, but they feel like it really what helps there is the coconut oil, which produces gives us ketones, which helps fuel without glucose, helps to satisfy the appetite. So matcha tea with some coconut oil in it for some people who can't make it, right? I personally go into ketosis pretty quickly. So I start burning ketones and I'm like high and I'm like really feeling great. I have no idea what my blood sugar is right now, but it's probably around 65 or 70.
See, I don't feel good at 65 at all. I start to get, just kind of sideways walking. And then when it hits like 55, I'm like, I need food. I get the shakes. I've been that way since I was a little girl, though. I grew up, my mom took me to a chiropractor when I was 4. We had a family member. We've been seeing chiropractors since I literally almost was in utero. And he did my blood test when I was that old because my mom was like, what is going on with Carmen? She's like spazzo every time she eats. And I was hypoglycemic as a child. So we did all of the food testing with the finger pricking and all of that. And I remember on the last one, I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember running from the lady. I was like behind a chair and she was coming at me with that finger stabber. And I was like, I've had enough. I did all my fingers and they got one last one and I like hit the floor. Like I'd had enough. But I don't know. I mean, that was a long time ago. I'm 45 now. So you know, that could be just my physiology, right? Like I just don't do well.
Yes, Anne. So I, when I was in my 20s, that happened to me. I did the glucose tolerance test. And when my sugar got down in the 50s, I was shivering, I was cold, I was cranky, I was irritable. But over time, in balancing out my body, I can do it just fine now. I don't get shivery or cold or anything. I just feel really good. So there could be some nutrient imbalance that's there, that it could be, you know, some genetically programmed weakness that you have to then compensate for. But I'd have, you know, I'd look more in depth. Because, you know, really we should be able to, I guess it's how well your body is, or your cells are responding to the glucose. So we used to think that the brain didn't get insulin resistant because it didn't need insulin, that the sugar just went up. That's what I was taught in school. But now the studies are showing, no, there's a lot of parts of the brain that do require insulin to shuttle the glucose in. So if those parts of your brain are not getting the glucose, if those are insulin resistant, then you're going to have a problem like that.
Yeah. Interesting. More hacking to do. So yeah, let's stop for a moment and go over here and we got a couple of questions. Mary Louise was asking, we're backing up into the surgery discussion, but she said, is that part of the reason you sometimes come out of surgery bloated for a day or three? Probably asking because of the stress.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons. If you have surgery and you have anesthesia, that's going to just, you know, kind of almost paralyze the digestive tract. But if you're just under stress, if you have a minor surgery and you don't have anesthesia, the stress of it can cause you to be bloated and constipated. A lot of times before surgery, they're going to do enemas on people and they're clearing you out. So part of that is there's just nothing left there to be emptying, and you haven't eaten for a long period of time and you have to get the whole thing started. But part of it can be that being in sympathetic dominance. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got the surgery thing down. I've got it. Like I recover like quick. I do the bone broth and I do the magnesium and I increase my meditation and I sleep constantly. I mean, I recover and use the bathroom within probably 24 to 30 hours after surgery. So yeah, that's one thing I don't go without is going to the bathroom.
Right, exactly. It's
only on a call like this can you talk about that. Okay, so Mary Louise says, I've read that intermittent fasting can be more harmful for women than men, perhaps because of sex hormones, ? What are your thoughts about the difference between men and women?
Well, I think there's a difference. You know, there's clearly a difference. Have I noticed that? You know, I think if that's the case, then there's probably some hormonal relationship, which I haven't really thought through to see what it is. But I just give people an opportunity to try it. And instead of going for that full 24 right away, the other aspect of intermittent fasting is, we'll call it like, so you just eat during a certain window during the day. So maybe you don't eat until 2 o'clock, you eat from 2 till 8. So you're eating 8 hours of the day, you're fasting 16. That's another way to do it. So one way to test to see if it's okay for you or your client is to just expand the space between meals. And what I find is that when people are in a state of adrenal dysregulation, that they can't space those meals because they go into this urgency, this panic mode, their nervous system does, and causes them to get jittery. So here's what happens. So I teach people to space their meals. I don't believe in the 2-hour grazing concept. I think people should be spacing their meals 4 to 6 hours. There's a lot of science to back that up, which probably don't have enough time to go into right now, but there's a lot of science to back that up. But when I first did my very first online blood sugar balancing program, because up till then I just worked with people one-on-one with this, and we had 110 people in the program. And the first few days, people were trying to get that spacing, and they were just jumping, like eating every 2 hours to eating every 4 to 6. And a handful of them were having heart palpitations and getting all jittery. And well, why? Well, because their adrenals kicked in, because they were so used to having this steady state blood sugar. As soon as it went down, the adrenals kicked in. Emergency, hypoglycemia, emergency. So what happens when you get those feelings like the jitteriness and you can't, it's the adrenals that are kicking in, right? And it's going, oh, it's adrenaline. So what you do in that case is you just gradually increase the spacing. So if you're working with somebody who eats every 2 hours, you don't put them on intermittent fasting because already they're telling you, look, if I go more than 2 hours, I get jittery. Well, good. Then don't put them on intermittent fasting. You know, the ones that have to eat right before they go to bed. We shouldn't be eating right before we go to bed. We should be stopping at dinner time. And the body goes into this mechanism where it just subsists until you get up in the morning. if you do wake up in the middle of the night jittery because your blood sugar is low, it's a problem, right?
Yes,
The temporary solution might be to just eat before you go to bed, but you really don't want to just give the temporary solution, because that's just like taking Advil. It's a temporary solution, right? It's not getting at the root.
Yeah. So tell us about the physiology of that. Isn't that where cortisol is searching for, I mean, like your body is looking for glucose in the middle of the night, and it gives you a surge of adrenaline, and that's why you're waking up and feeling kind of shaky and things like that.
Yeah, your body's, you're looking for the steady state. And really what's supposed to happen is a beautiful dance between insulin and glucagon. So whatever that sweet spot, I like to call it, whatever that ideal blood sugar level is for you, your body's searching for that. So you eat a meal, sugar goes up, insulin takes it down, and then you burn a lot of it. If you're going a long period of time, the sugar will start to go low. And then the glucagon goes, whoops, sugar's going too low. Let's take some of the stored glycogen and let's make it into glucose, and it brings it back up, and it maintains a balance of where that is for you that feels good. A couple of things could interrupt that. One, if you don't have enough glycogen stored, right? If you're on an extreme low carbohydrate diet, which might have been what happened to you, you're on an extreme low carbohydrate diet, you don't have much in the way of a glycogen store. Yeah. So when it starts to go low, the glucagon is going, well, okay, but then it tries to do some, burn fat, and it doesn't do that very effectively. It doesn't stimulate that, and that's a slower process. If someone is really good at burning ketones or burning fat for fuel, then, and that takes some training of doing it for a while, then easy, no big deal. Let's just keep the blood sugar low. Let's just burn fat, right? And that's really a good mode to get into, right? There's a lot of, it's a clean fuel and it's real easy, but it takes a while to train the body to get there, right? Yeah, I've done enough fasting. I think that I get there easily. So I just feel good when my blood sugar goes low. I feel hungry, don't get me wrong. I feel hungry, but I don't feel jittery or agitated or anything like that. So I think that in the middle of the night, what I see, because you go to bed with your glucose, say at 85, you wake up with your glucose at 85, right? Yeah. So how does that happen? You don't stay there because you're burning during the night because your liver's active and you're doing all kinds of detox and cleansing. There's activity going on during the burning fuel, but it's this like this. Yeah.
Mine's like 75 when I wake up, and then sometimes it's like 82. 75 to 82 is where it kind of stays every morning. I did it every morning for like 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get anything.
It's a nice, healthy range. It's a really healthy range. And if you look at what is it before you go to bed, take a look at that just out of curiosity to see
if it's like 86, I think.
Yeah, so it just goes down a teeny tiny bit. It doesn't go too much, right? And it depends on how close to bedtime you eat. If you eat right before, if you eat 3 or 4 hours before, then you're going to be at a nice low level.
Yeah, I love to play with that. And I used to be, like I said, I ran from the lady with the finger poker. And I literally, throughout my life was afraid of the little finger poker, right? The little, and so now, like one time I actually got it because I wanted to overcome that fear of needles, and I wanted to check my blood sugar one time. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this and do a test for myself until I get over this. And I started getting like excited about tracking how I was responding to food. And it became, now it's part of my life. At least once a week, I'll pull it out and do a day where I'm checking how I'm doing with food. And that's how I came to contact you last week. But so interesting. So one other thing I wanted to ask you is, can you give me a brief, we're getting close to the time thing on the hour, but tell me how one does get into that where they feel good like you feel on intermittent fasting, because I've heard such great things about it, being for people who are trying to get over a hump with weight loss. They've hit a plateau. Many, many clients are like, I don't care about anything else. I just want to lose weight. And of course, we have to address the underlying reasons why they're not. And so that may be something where someone could try that and learn how to do that, and still work on the reason why they have those problems also. So what's an easy way, like, or a resource maybe that we can share with people that can get them into that state where they're burning ketones?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to it. So a lot of it is cleaning the diet up, because most people are eating the foods that require a lot of insulin. So when I'm working with somebody on cleaning this whole thing up, I say, the first thing we're going to do, actually, I used to say the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reduce your need for insulin, right? But then I realized that a lot of people already have this huge need, and their receptors are burned out, and they've burned out the nutrition. So now what I say is, I want to improve your insulin sensitivity. So I want to make sure that the nutrients required for that insulin sensitivity are up to speed. Chromium, magnesium, DHA, that good source of omega-3s, in some cases the B vitamins. So really evaluating which of those nutrients they need. But I find that the top 3 that work the best for my clients are magnesium, chromium, and DHA in a specific set. So I oftentimes have them just do that for a week or 2. So that
you're saying DHA or
DHA, not
okay,
EA.
Yeah, not EA. Okay, yeah.
Hexanoic acid. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So DHA. And then so I have them do that for a couple of weeks. And then when they start to space their meals out, they're not craving as much. Their body's able to balance better because the insulin receptors start to work better. And then we do a process where we look at what are the causes of this mechanism being out of balance. So I'm looking at their sleep. I'm looking at their stress. I teach them how to do heart math right from the beginning. It's like the first thing I teach them. I teach them about burst training. Just short bursts, 30 seconds of exercise.
Yes.
Start with once a day. Go to 8 times a day. Can you spare 4 minutes a day to exercise? Right? That helps to improve insulin sensitivity. So we want to just really do better at this whole process. In terms of specifics for helping to make them burn ketones, it's just so unique from person to person.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of going to the foundations and giving them all the nutrients they need. Most people are depleted because of the food they're eating is depleted. So I get them on a lot of greens. There's people who have sensitivities to oxalates or sensitivities to various green things. We work with those individually and help them to get the ones that work. But most people don't eat enough greens. They get hungry and they go to the refrigerator and they look for the heaviest, densest source of calories. And the hunger doesn't come from lack of calories because you can burn your butt if you need calories. Right? The hunger comes from lack of minerals and lack of the antioxidants and nutrients that we need. And I proved this to myself time and time again, and I think I just did it again, fell into that trap the other day. But when my kids were little, I would be like chasing them around and doing all this stuff, and I would be ravenously hungry. Well, I wasn't sleeping, so not sleeping affects leptin and ghrelin and affects the hunger. And I was ravenously hungry, and I'd eat a meal, and I wouldn't get full. And I was, at that time, I would say, okay, I'm going to eat dense foods because I can't sit down. I don't have time to sit down and eat a big salad. And I would just go, okay, go for the nuts, go for the seeds, go for the, whole grains, whatever. And I would just stay hungry. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I just ate 800 calories worth of food and I'm still ravenously hungry. And then I say, well, forget this. I haven't had, anything green today. So I'd make a big pot of broccoli and eat the steamed broccoli with some flax oil and salt on it. Hunger went away like that.
Yeah.
100 calories of broccoli, hunger went away, and they realized it was minerals.
Yes, isn't that amazing? And yeah, which brings me to this question real quick, because this has been in my mind too. I could talk to you for like 6 hours. What is your favorite method of testing for mineral deficiency? So many people out there believe in the hair mineral analysis. I've done that. I've done every test known to man. So tell me what your favorites are.
Well, first of all, looking at their diet, I know it. Looking at their symptoms. I have a questionnaire. I have like a 14-page questionnaire that's vitamin and mineral assessment. And it has questions for each of the nutrients. And I just check that off. But I can hear it right away. I know that based on what they're eating that they're going to be mineral deficient. The other way I do it is a lingual test from Body Bio. Mm-hmm. And there's these little taste testers, and it's similar to the zinc tally test, which you might have heard about.
Oh, yeah.
You taste it, and you, based on the taste, then that says whether you're deficient, sufficient, or excess. And you can do that for all, there's about 8 minerals that they've developed tests for.
Okay.
Over the course of many years, and you can look up their science and their research, lots and lots of research. And I just do that. I do the lingual tests. And if I see that they're low in everything, like marginally low, like there's a scale of 1 to 8. And if they're a 3, I'm like, you're marginally low in everything. This isn't an issue of a specific mineral. This is a stomach acid issue.
Okay.
You're not making enough stomach acid to be able to absorb your minerals. Right. Okay. So I can get a lot of information, but if they're like, yeah, magnesium's good and chromium's good, but manganese and I don't know, whatever other ones they have are off, copper are off, then we know to supplement. But the supplements I like to use for minerals are liquid. I like to use ion liquid because it gets right in. You don't have to worry about it going through the whole digestive tract. So it just jump starts the system. Oh. If a person is low stomach, if they have all of them low, I'm going to focus on getting them just an overall general mineral supplement, but extra zinc, and then do bitters to stimulate the production of stomach acid.
Right.
Mistake people make, they'll give the person, say, bitters to stimulate production of stomach acid, or they'll give them HCl, and they don't give them zinc. So the zinc is required to make it, zinc and magnesium and all that, but zinc especially. So it feels to me like zinc deficiencies are that big piece that people need to overcome when they have low stomach acid, but low stomach acid causes zinc deficiency. Low zinc causes low stomach acid, so you have to supply both.
Yeah,
I like to supply both.
Yeah, it's a partnership. That's interesting, and I have always heard about the zinc. You know, I take ionic zinc, and for a while there, you know, I was like, you know, I don't taste anything. It's like water. And then one day I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Yeah. And so I went and had my red blood cell count, zinc and red, you know, RBC magnesium done recently, and my zinc is high, but only by a few points, because once I started to taste it, I backed down on the ionic zinc, but it shows exactly that I am at the top of the range. Very interesting.
Right.
So let's cover
red blood cells is the best way to do it. Red blood cell or white cell.
Yes.
That's on the mineral. And that's the thing that this Body Bio has done. They did the testing comparatively, right? So the symptoms go away, and the level on their test and the level in the blood cells. So they found a correlation, and it's cheap and inexpensive. To get the red blood cell stuff, it's very expensive. You have to get your blood drawn. So you have to find a doctor that's willing to draw the blood for you. And that becomes problematic in a lot of cases, because they just poo-poo all the, you know.
Yes, I'm aware of that, as we talked about earlier. But let me ask a couple more questions, and then we've got you for, it's already 1:03. Okay, so Kathy is asking, do you have to stop supplementing during a fast, or do you recommend it?
You know, it depends on what you're doing the fast for. So if somebody's doing a long fast and they really want to get their body completely cleaned out, sometimes lack of supplementation is good, but it's very variable. It's based on the person. But for the intermittent fasting, no. Depends on what you're taking, though. Like if you're doing fasting to determine food sensitivities, then I like to get people off of everything for at least 4 days, because you never know when something in one of the supplements is creating a food sensitivity reaction. So many of these supplements have rice flour, and they have what's that called? Cellulose, and various things that people respond to. So
lactose, and some have gluten in them, which you don't even know it until you look it up. It's crazy.
Maltodextrin, that's a common one. It's usually from corn or gluten, and people are taking this stuff and they're going, how come I'm not doing better on my gluten-free diet?
Oh, I've had that happen with so many clients. I'm like, you know, look at your labels. Let's look it up. So, so Gabriella even says, I was always hungry when I moved to the U.S. before I added micronutrients into my diet. I did not have that problem in Italy. I mean, true.
The food was more dense. Yeah.
Stephanie Barton says, we sell Angstrom liquid minerals where I work, and I love them. And Veronica says, I want to learn functional medicine. What's the quickest, least expensive way to earn a functional nutrition certification? I'm already 56. Age has nothing to do with learning. It has
nothing to do with it. I'll tell you, we have a program called the Nutritional Endocrinology Practitioner Training. We have a 1-year foundations, and we have a 2-year certification program. We just did a live event. We have our second 70-plus-year-old join the program. We have a 72-year-old, a 73-year-old. We have a number of people in their 60s, and you can do this without having to go back to school and go 4 years like I did. I quit my job, and I went back to school and got the prereqs, and that took me a year or two to get the prereqs, because my degree was in computer science. And then I had to do the 4 years of chiropractic. I did the 2 years of nutrition masters, and then finally, you know, like 6 years later and $400,000 later, this was back in the 80s, mind you, or early 90s.
Yeah,
I had a degrees, and then it was like, what the hell do I do now? Nobody had the process, the step by step. So I've developed that. What do you do with this information? And we have people working through it on their own. We have people who are just going out there. They're doing online programs. They're doing it while they're learning, and it's pretty phenomenal. So if you want more information about that, just go to nutritionalendocrinology.com, and you can sign up for my little success kit, and it'll come back and say, hey, what about would you like to set up a strategy session? Or you can go directly to neptapply.com. And on that page, there's a PDF file, like 16, 18 pages long, that describes the entire curriculum. And then sign up for a strategy session with one of our people, and they'll let you know if it's for you.
Yeah, I've got when I share the recording, I will be sharing the information within the document in our Facebook group that leads to Ritamarie. So you guys will have all that information that you need for sure. And you're listed in one of my schools that I recommend within my documents too. So yeah, and she says she feels the need to hurry. And I just, real quick, Veronica, I started over completely when I turned 38. I started over with my life. I don't think that age is just a number when it comes to what we're supposed to be doing in our lives shift as we go along. And you're heading in the right direction. That's all that matters. So Mary Louise says, just for clarification, the mineral test you discussed is a lingual test. Where can we buy that?
Amazon.
Amazon, yeah. Okay, and I'll find it for you guys. I'll also include that in the notes. And Kathy is asking, are you NCCHWC approved?
What does that mean?
Then no, she's not. So the National Consortium of Credentialing Health and Wellness Coaches. That is we had a call yesterday with Leanne Webster, who does the NCCHWC. And I'm going to share the information with you too, because that's something
we're right now we're doing our credentialing. We're credentialed through the American Association of Drugless Practitioners. We're almost done with the NANP, National Association of Nutrition Practitioners. So if there's another one that we need to get approval by, let's find out. Yeah.
I'm sure that your program is already it's ready to fill to be to approve. Now the doors are not open for applying, but I'm going to share it with you because this is a national certification program that is supposed to, they're creating an exam for health coaches, and health coaches can sit for this, and then they can call themselves nationally certified health coaches. Whereas right now, there is no regulation of that. So this particular organization, they opened up to, and working with the National Board of Medical Educators, something like that, to start giving more credibility to coaches. So that will be even a bigger push for your students as well. Right. So I'll share all of that with you in an email so you have that information.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So anyway, so the last thing we're going to read here is I'm almost 52. It is my turn to learn. I will always keep learning and share what I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm continuing to learn. And like I said, we just had a woman join. We had a 72-year-old join last year, and she's like, I'm getting my own life together, and now I'm ready to teach others in my age group because they're giving up. And this other woman is there. She goes, I don't know if I should join at my age. I'm 73. I'm like, oh, go talk to Mary Lynn. She's already in, and she's 72. And yeah, we have these people that start all over in their 60s and 70s. Yeah, we also have people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. We have people who have been medical doctors for 15, 20 years and are just so burned out and so tired of not getting results that they join our program. And we have lots and lots of nurses. We have lots of IIN grads, chiropractors, acupuncturists, naturopaths, physical therapy doctors, PAs. We have all kinds, and health coaches of all different sorts. Yeah. And then we have people who are personally trained. So they've been digging and digging and digging, and they know a lot. And that's the thing we want to find out. We don't want to put you in over your head. If you're just really like, hey, I've been a cosmetologist for years and now I want to be a health coach, and you don't really have the background, we'll tell you how you can get up to speed. There are other programs that help you get up to speed before you go in depth with nutritional endocrinology. But we've had people, some of our best students have been yoga teachers, people who are in the psychology, like masters in psychology. We had an advertising person who decided she had been so digging into her own health for years, and she said, can I really do this? And she turned out to be one of our best students.
Yeah, so, I agree 100%. I studied for 15 years just because I have my own stuff going on. And my husband one day was like, why don't you just go to medical school? Like, I've never known anyone that got the Grey's Anatomy manual just for fun. Like, that's, I'm like, but it's fascinating to me. And, he glazes over when I talk about the body. I think that the older we are and the more experience that we have behind us, the more it seems like people, they tend to gravitate towards us more. Oh, you girls are funny. They're talking about starting an over 50s club. So funny. Yeah. No, the older we are, the more experience we have, the more knowledge we have, the more we are able to share. So,
and you can relate to people better, and you relate to the struggles. So when I first started out in practice, I wasn't young. I was like 30. Yeah, 30, I think, 86. No, I was 35 when I finished school. So I was 35. And even at that age, I was like, oh, well, here's your list of things to do. Just go do it. Like, why aren't you doing it? And I didn't get it. I didn't get the obstacles. I didn't get the emotional pieces. I didn't get all that stuff. And now as I've grown, you know, once I hit 50, it was like, oh yeah, everything's great. You know, I stepped into my power more. I can relate to people better. I trust my intuition more. Plus I've developed all these processes that I've done.
Yeah. And you've overcome, don't you just feel like every year that passes, like fear used to just rule me. I used to be afraid to talk in front of large groups of people. I used to be afraid of this. I just don't have fear anymore. Like, I mean, even when it comes down to having any kind of a conflict with somebody, I am the person that's going to call or like say, hey, let's get together and talk about this. Like, there's no reason to have conflict. Like, you know, I have no more fears in my life. I really don't. And I think that comes with age and experience. So
I think so too. So
yeah,
don't let that hold you back.
Yeah. Don't let anything hold us back from our gifts. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's more than your gifts. It's your contribution to the world.
Yeah.
So when you hold back because of a limitation in you, it's very selfish because you're allowing these people or keeping those people, preventing these people who need you from getting to you. So let go of that stuff. Let go of you. Take you out of the equation. It's all about them and your service. And what can you give from your gifts to them?
Yeah, just like Gabriella, when we talked today with Gabriella Polici, she was saying, I always walk into any kind of a partnership or collaboration saying, what can I do for you? And when we're in that state of mind and that giving state of being, then nothing can ever go wrong.
Right.
Nothing, no matter what you're doing or who you're dealing with, period. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I love talking to you. You're so awesome. I just enjoyed this so much.
It's been so fun.
Yeah, you have such great energy. And just as an FYI, I'm on the cusp of starting a podcast where I'm going to be bringing experts into coaches. So I definitely want you to tuck me into your brain. Like, don't forget about me because I want to bring you back to my people and continue to have these great conversations. It's just so valuable. So, but I want to say thank you. And I will definitely email you with some of that stuff we talked about earlier with you too. And I will share this recording, you guys. Just keep your eyes on the Facebook page, and I'll get it to you as soon as I can. So,
all right. Thank you.
All right. Go out in the world and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.